very good evening to all our viewers. You are watching India Prime. I'm Sumit Chaturvedi, and today we are going to talk about a very interesting subject, which is GDP or Gross Domestic Product. Now we will today know how it is calculated, what is its importance, and how it's going to be further impacting our lives going forward. So we start with, first of all, our view on and our information on the GDP so far. If we start with the first year, we take as 2012 and 13, where we were growing, the GDP was growing by 5.5%. In 2013 and 14, a year after, it was growing at the rate of 6.4%. The GDP was growing at a rate of 6.4%. Thereafter, 2014 and 15, it was growing at the rate of 7.5%. And 15 and 16, it was at its peak. It was growing at the rate of 8%. But from 8%, in 2016 and 17, which is in the financial year which just went by, it came down sharply to 7.1%. So that's what GDP has completely shown us so far, from 8% to 7.1% in the last financial year. Now we see how the note ban has impacted. So GDP growth in the last financial year, in the first quarter was 7.9%. It came down to 7.5% in July-September quarter, which was second quarter. In third quarter, it came down to 7%, October-December quarter. But then, November 2016, the note ban decision was taken and it fell sharply to 6.1%, which was the quarter after this note ban decision was taken. So we are seeing from 7%, it came down to 6.1%, which was Q4 of FY17. So this is overall situation as far as GDP was concerned. So note ban clearly impacted GDP over there, and it came down by 1%, nearly 1%. But India is still shining. We compare India with other countries, and if we see Brazil in 2016, Brazil overall had a degrowth of 3.6%, and other countries as compared to India were having less growth as far as GDP is concerned. But India is still shining bright. It is still having a good growth of around 7.1%, which is registered in the last financial year. Today also, Finance Minister Jaitley said that 7 to 8% growth is good for India. It is quite a reasonable growth. To talk more on all these issues, we are joined by our guests from different cities today. From Mumbai, we have Dr. Suyaj Bhatt, who is an economist and professor at V School. Mr. Rishi Shah, he is an economist also and a consultant with Deloitte. And we have Mr. Sanjeev Ahluwalia, who is an economist as well as an advisor, Observer Research Foundation. So we are going to see what is GDP, how does it impact us, how does it impact people, and how is it calculated first of all. That's a very important point which is to be noted. So my first question from the panelists would be, first of all, I would ask Mr. Rishi Shah, should we be very, very concerned about this 6.1% growth which has come down, which has fallen to 6.1%? Should, as we Indians, be concerned about it?
Right. So, this was more or less expected. Possibly the decline that we saw, finally, the quantum of it wasn't expected, but the overall headline number, if you concentrate on that for the full year, is 7.1%, which is pretty much in line with what has happened. The broader idea is that if you look at the minutiae of the data for the last full year, you saw that it was a year of two halves. The first half was pretty good, after which there was a deceleration, which possibly also got accentuated by the decision to demonetize. As we go ahead, the growth rate should mean revert above 7%, possibly in the range of 7.1 to 7.5% for the full year. And I really don't think there is much of a concern right now, because we are at a very comfortable position as far as our macroeconomic parameters are concerned. So inflation remains low, current account deficit remains low, the currency has been very stable, we've been getting record FDI inflows, FPI inflows have also been at pretty high levels. There's a decent amount of confidence in the economy, and slowly but surely we seem to be at least working towards solving a lot of our inherent structural issues. So overall, I think it's not a situation that you should worry about, and this blip that you see in the growth rates is more likely to be a temporary one.
Mr. Ahluwalia, your answer on this question, 6.1% growth, as Indians, should we be concerned about it?
Well, I hate to disagree a little bit with Dr. Shah here, but I think that it's generally good to be worried about your performance. As soon as, and I'm talking here really as somebody who has worked within the public sector, that as soon as the public sector starts becoming complacent about its performance, it generally results in negative outcomes, because we don't reach higher. That's sort of a normal psychology of the public sector. So I think that we should worry about the fact that there was a blip, right? And we should also ensure that such blips, for example, this one, which may have been caused or may have been exacerbated by demonetization, do not happen again. And we also should take remedial steps to basically ensure that our export growth, which is the weak point that we have today in the economy, which Dr. Shah didn't mention, they grow strongly, which they are not. Now, we do have a problem that world growth itself is very slow, against the normal trend of world growth, which is around 4% over a 20-year period. World growth is only at 3%. So it is but normal that due to the lack of demand, our exports and our economy should also slow down. So I don't think it's a major disaster, but I think some lessons need to be learned from the fact that we need to sustain a very credible and even pace and even trend of growth, because that is when you can be sure that you are doing things optimally.
My second question to you, Mr. Shah, what does it mean for a common man when we say that economy is slowing down? What does it mean for a common man? Does it mean there will be less jobs to be created?
So, the question of jobs is a very tricky one. And the relationship between higher growth, particularly associated with higher number of jobs, that relationship seems to have broken down in the last decade or so. With the, the amount of mechanization that has come into the economy, it's higher GDP growth will obviously lead to higher number of jobs, but the quality of jobs and the kind of jobs that you want, they may or may not come. So this is, a topic that is still being studied in detail. But for the common man, the most important thing that, you should sort of be looking at is still growing at a comfortable pace. And, if you look at the projections again, projections would suggest, and it is our own estimate, that growth should move higher from the current levels. The only point of worry that, I would say, that, and what as Sir was also pointing out there, was that last year it was, towards the end you were slowing down. And you really need to figure out as to was this something that can get elongated in the coming quarters, or was this like a one-off? So we are going with the call that this is a one-off, this is a temporary blip, and this sort of improves. But yes, clearly it has to be, dealt with some amount of seriousness.
Your thoughts on this subject, Mr. Ahluwalia, that what does it mean for a common man? Is the only less job creation, something they should be worried about?
Well, the common man, jobs is actually a very good proxy, I would say, for income in the hands of people, right? And for a sense of dignity and for a sense of independence, particularly, I would say, for women and for marginalized communities. And so from that point of view, getting a job which is not a transitory job is a very big deal for the ordinary man. But the jobs problem is a universal, it's a worldwide problem today. The number of jobs available are lesser, and the nature of jobs available are changing. We are at the cusp of a major transition brought about by technological change. And I think we're part of that. Now, the good news is that it's not as if the government is completely insensitive to the provision of jobs. I was reading somewhere that the Rural Development Minister had said that they had created around 26 million jobs last year, 16-17, through the NREGA and the house building and the other programs in rural areas. The other thing I think that the government needs to look at very specifically is improving the social services that are available to people. The problem of poverty or the problem of low income is exacerbated if the services which are available are not good. You know, we always think of the poor as a static number of people, but that's far from the truth. People fall out of poverty, that is, they go out of poverty, but they fall back in, especially if somebody falls ill or if there's a drought. Or, for example, if there's demonetization and you lose your job. So I think in those emergent times, we need a normal, sustainable level of social services that can see people through such bad times. That we are weak on. But I think the government is looking very strongly at improving those. So it's not a doomsday scenario. It's not a grim scenario at all. We shouldn't get, I think, caught up in the minutiae, as Dr. Shah said, of 6.1 or 5.3. What does it really mean to a common man? But yes, jobs, those are meaningful.
I'll also ask questions from my guest from Mumbai, Mr. Suyash Bhatt. Good evening to you, Mr. Bhatt. I would like to ask you that government today said that not only note ban, but several other factors were responsible for this kind of dip in growth. What do you mean by, or what do they mean by these other factors?
So I feel it's more of a face-saving act, because even in World Bank's report it was clearly mentioned that demonetization is one event which has clearly dented this momentum that India had. And I think it's just a way of shifting the focus from what has happened or the major event that has happened to someone else, maybe global economy slowing down, or exports going down, or maybe put the blame on China. What Sumit, I would be more interested in, if you read that number, you would find something even more startling, that we were in last quarter we were number one in terms of highest GDP growth. With this last quarter's number at 6.1%, we are now second fastest growing economy, and China has already taken over with a 6 point. So though China is facing a slowdown, but it's still higher than India when you talk about 6.9%. Also, we need to understand that it has a much larger base. It's a $20 trillion economy. We are a $2 trillion economy that you're talking about. So when you are already at a lower base, and if you slow down, it's not something which you should take it lightly as a central bank or even as a central government. And the only way you can come out of this is by giving some kind of stimulus, because all over the paper you're seeing that our service sector is facing challenges, and the only thing that people are betting on is the consumer durable and the consumer spending. And the only way you can lift consumer spending is by cutting rates. And I think the next trigger would definitely be, some kind of an action from RBI in terms of, relaxation of monetary policy, which again is doubtful, because knowing the stance that they have taken in last two policy statements that they have given, it's difficult to predict whether they'll actually cut down rates or no. But I think that's one thing which would clearly, boost the economy when we talk from a regulatory perspective. The second point that the government said that GST would, probably soothe the effect of, fall from 7.1 to 6.1. But again, I doubt GST may not cause more than 50 basis point, change in the GDP number, because as we know that, apart from the four structures that the government has said and all the things that have been said, we need to understand GST is going to be revenue neutral, and still the biggest wild card which is there, which is not yet disclosed, that's the cess element. If the cess element is unraveled and the states are allowed to charge the way they want, then I'm not sure even that 50 basis point would be seen in the economy.
Okay, one more question to you, Mr. Bhatt. I would ask you that, first of all, is there a good point also that GDP is down, because in a way it has given legitimacy to the overall initiatives that were taken to ban the black money or to take out the black money from the economy. So are there any good points of this GDP coming down as well?
So GDP coming down is definitely not a good news from any angle. Even if you talk about black money, black money theoretically, as it is, it was not reported. So even if a unreported transaction goes down or goes up, theoretically it should have no impact on the GDP figures that you have. So I don't see any impact of black money spending going down on GDP figures that have been revealed. And this clearly, I don't see this number going down as a good news, because any momentum, you need to understand, in physics we say that to push something, it always takes more effort. And the moment once the momentum is broken, to again, reverse the gear, it definitely is going to need more than one or two, GST or maybe rate cut. It would definitely need some more out-of-the-box thinking for the government to put things together. And with the challenging global environment, protectionism that we are talking about, how job creation happens is something really interesting to be seen. And I think it calls for some out-of-the-box solution that the government would have to apply to really come out of this situation that we are facing.
All right. Now, we must also explain to our viewers what is GDP. GDP is basically a sum total of all the goods and services produced in the economy. It is a measure to indicate and to gauge how well the economy is doing and to gauge the health of country's economy. So overall, what is GDP? We can overall say that GDP is a sum total of all the goods and services produced over a period of time. GDP is gross domestic product. It is constituted of agriculture, whatever is produced there, banking, your construction, goods and services, manufacturing and mining. These are the main components of GDP, or how gross domestic product is calculated. So this is GDP, and for a normal person, we should tell them that it is the sum total of all the goods and services produced in the economy. Now we should see whether India is really shining. If we compare India to other countries in the world, we see Brazil, which is a developing country like India. In 2016, the Brazil had a degrowth in economy of 3.6%, but in 2017, it was growing by just 0.2%. We come to Russia, it had a degrowth of 0.2%, but in 2017, which is FY16-17, it was growing at 1.4%. But come to India, and India in 2016, we were growing at 8%, but we have come down to 7.1% in the last financial year. If you compare it to China, the neighbor, they were growing by 6.7% in 2016, and 17 they have grown by 6.6%. And South Africa, another developing country, it was growing by 0.3% in 2016, while in FY17 it saw a growth of 0.8% in GDP. So India is still above other countries as far as BRICS nations are concerned. It is still, we can say that, better than most of the nations, if not all of them. Now we see sector-wise, how's the performance so far? Well, in January-March quarter, we can say that electricity and other utilities, 6.1% growth. In 2016-17, earlier 7.2%, so it has come down a bit. We can see other sectors also, but the biggest dip has been in construction, where the construction sector growth has come down to 3.7% from 1.7% earlier. Well, this is huge dip, and that has led to a big fall in overall dip in GDP of our nation. The other sectors are also there. Mining, it is actually has gone up, but other sectors have come down, and that's why GDP in last quarter has dipped to 6.1% compared with 7% earlier. I'll go back to my guest and I will again ask Mr. Shah first of all. Mr. Shah, if we want to ask you, overall economy is doing good in India, and overall there are good, we can say that, good factors as far as going forward is concerned. So going forward, do you see any big concerns over the economy?
Well, concerns are obviously there with, how global growth is panning out, and whether there'll be any negative factors with the kind of protectionist rhetoric that is developing in the world. As we earlier also, discussed, that exports remain a crucial factor in this whole story of growth, and that's something that we need to focus on. But with this growing protectionism globally, it might be called into question. On the domestic front, I think we're pretty in a good position. GST is likely to come into effect in the next couple of months. Initially, it can cause a little bit of disruption, as is the case with any new taxation law that comes into the economy. But over a period of 2 to 3 years, I think those issues will peter out, and you will actually start seeing the big benefits of that. So there are more opportunities at the domestic front rather than challenges right now. The only one, again, as we discussed earlier, remains the jobs, and how do you really create more jobs for everybody? That remains to be the crucial question. As far as growth is concerned, I think we are in a pretty good spot. International concerns, yes, they still remain, and that is something that we will need to look into much more detail.
But today, government has also come out and has defended the decision of note ban, and they actually told everyone present in the press conference there, where FM Jaitley was present, as to what were the reasons why GDP dipping is not a big worry. Let's listen to him.
There are several factors which can contribute to a GDP in a particular quarter. There was some slowdown visible given the global and the domestic situation even prior to the demonetization in the last year. There was impact of global factors. There could be some impact on 1 quarter or so, or 2 quarters of one particular factor which you mentioned. There's also the impact of, if you look at the various sectors, the 9 to 10% growth which was normally in the services and in the financial sector had come down. Therefore, the ability of the banks itself but I do believe that in the current global situation, a 7 to 8% growth, which is at the moment the Indian normal, is a fairly reasonable, by global standards very good, by our own standards fairly reasonable level of growth.
So my closing comments from you, Mr. Ahluwalia. FM Jaitley today said that 7 to 8% of growth is also normal. It's quite normal for a country like India. Do you agree with that?
Well, look, first, 2 things. One, there is a massive difference between 7% rate of growth and 8% rate of growth. As you reach these higher growth levels, it becomes increasingly more difficult to grow even faster. And it's in that context that we have to see what the normal rate of, the rate of growth for India should be. I think there is a wide consensus that the new normal for India, the rate of growth for India, in the context of world growth, is closer to 7 than it is to 8. If world growth picks up and the facilitating environment exists, trade remains open, as Dr. Shah has said, we solve our big NPA problem, which is the elephant in the room. 5% of the GDP consists of loans which are bad, and the banks have to be capitalized, these loans have to be dealt with. The government has taken steps. They've now sort of re-empowered the Reserve Bank of India to do something about it. So I'm sure things will be resolved. But I would urge actually the government to be cautious in setting targets rather than being very, very optimistic.
Right.
So I think we should aim over the next year at 7. If we do better, then that's to our credit. And if we do worse, then we have to look at it again. By the way, I must say, that Finance Minister Jaitley, and I'm sure you'll agree, has done a wonderful job in restraining the fiscal deficit.
All right.
And this is the approach he took there. So I say once again that, you know, a cautious approach is advisable.
Fine. On this note, I will thank all my guests. This is all today we have on this edition of India Prime. For more news and updates, stay tuned to WION, and thanks once again for watching us.